I'm Bill Robison. I've been a member of this church for over 35 years. There were about 800 people at a service. The choir loft was full, parking spaces for 250 cars for the drive-in. There were television cameras. It was very, very interesting, very, very alive.
At school, people would talk about it. They either had gone there or that they wanted to go there.
Starting a church on the top of a snack bar in a drive-in, that was edgy.
They had ideas of how to reach people, progressive ideas, West Coast ideas.
They were called the greatest generation for a reason. They found beauty in their community, and they built things that represented their generation.
But I guess the best memory I have of this building is getting married in it. And it's a memory 34 years later, almost to the day, that I still have. Those were the good old days. Those are the days when things were happening and people wanted to be here. And it's a shame that it has to go. Well, the drive-in component to this church started in 1957 when the head pastor, Bill Miedema, preached from the top of the old Los Altos drive-in snack bar with a portable organ and a sound system, and the cars would drive in and they'd have church. In 1964, the architect Benno Fischer designed the fellowship hall. The services were held outside from a stage from the fellowship hall to the cars. And then in 1970 completed this building, which is the sanctuary. He modeled it after the original Crystal Cathedral or Garden Grove Community Church was known at that time that Dr. Schuller was the pastor of. Founding pastor Bill Miedema was a good friend of Robert Schuller, and they went to seminary together. They had ideas of how to reach people, and together the original Crystal Cathedral and Dorado Park Church were both designed so people could drive in and be in their cars. Very 50s, very early 60s, new and exciting way of worshiping, and everything transitioned from there.
In the early to mid 60s, most of us went to drive-in theaters rather than walk-in. It was just kind of the way that you went to the movies. And so to take that Southern California phenomenon and translate it into the church, I thought it was brilliant.
They parked on that kind of incline or that hump that was built in there. They had speakers, and they would put that on their car and they would listen to the choir sing, they'd listen to the preacher preach.
It was very much like a drive-in theater. Would get loaded up into the family station wagon, and you would hook up your speaker to the car, and then you would hear the message for that week.
It was a casual way of hearing God's word, and it caught on.
The cars were large. They made cars very big back then. A lot of large fins in the back. Everybody kind of checking each other out a little bit through their windows. Admittedly, in the car, the younger kids would actually be in their pajamas.
That was edgy. That wasn't what people were doing. People were like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you do that? That's not holy, or whatever they would say. And so I think that was the innovative idea of the day.
Good morning. And a wonderful welcome to you who are worshiping in the drive-in congregation this morning, and to everybody who's worshiping out there in the television congregation this morning. You are lucky people.
Back in the 60s, television was fairly new. Dr. Robert Schuller had the idea that you could reach people through the medium of television. He took that to the greatest degree in the Hour of Power. He's one of the pioneers of that in Southern California.
This is the day that God has made. Let us rejoice.
The idea was to reach people that would be hesitant to come to a church, but they could still sit at home and hear the word. In this church, they had 3 cameras, and they would record and air the service.
The architecture itself, probably the most significant thing is the cross, the steeple that's in the sky.
the first thing you noticed was this large wheat shaft with this cross coming out of the middle. And it's massive, it can be seen for miles.
That concept really, I think, matched this generation. What they were building, it was a desire to build something beautiful, and it really glorified God in that.
My first impression was how large it was. It was big windows, all this light was coming in. A window that can slide open so that a pastor can go outside and greet and talk to the people in the cars. It was just fantastic. When they built this, they had what they called the singing fountains. It was a pond, nozzles and fountains that would spray water as high as this building. So when you came into the building, they would do the fountains up and down to music and lights. They used what they call Palos Verdes stone, that you cannot mine that anymore. But all this building, the stones you see around this building, inside and out, are all Palos Verdes stone, laid one stone at a time, and it's a shame that it has to go. This was where you'd enter in through the front doors. All the fountains were there. You'd come in, you'd see the choir, the cross, the pews were here, you'd have your seat. You had a church experience that was typical of the 60s and 70s and 80s. In its heyday around 1975, it had over 1,000 members, it had parking spaces for 250 cars for the drive-in. It had services twice on Sunday. The choir loft was full, the organ was playing, there were kids everywhere, there were 3 or 4 pastors, it was a very vibrant time. Things were good. As the 80s and 90s rolled on, it became a matter of survival. Congregation was getting older, moving away.
No baptisms, no marriages from within the church, and literally funerals weekly, if not every other week.
Changes in generations, changes in demographics, the numbers declined.
As the city evolved, it didn't fit in quite as well.
When this was started, the neighborhood was primarily white, but the church didn't look like our neighborhood.
You have to modify churches to meet the demographic needs of the city, and we're one of the most diverse cities in the country.
Sadly, they're one of the slower moving organizations to adapt.
Churches, they have different lifespans, just like businesses and humans.
Society wanted more comfort. There was no air conditioning in this building. It would get very, very hot.
As we used more electricity with amps or with guitars, we were just putting a strain on a building that wasn't built to be used like that.
The struggles financially to pay for this building with the declining membership, declining finances. Now we had a 30-plus-year-old building that needed maintenance that we could not afford to do.
This building still to this day has nothing handicap available, no ADA restroom. One of the worst moments, a woman came in a wheelchair, but in the middle of the service she had to go to the bathroom. She had to leave, she had to go home. I'll never forget that. We'd had offers constantly of people that wanted to buy because real estate developers are developing land. And so that's what pushed us into the conversation about maybe selling. The largest challenge is the heart. The folks in our church that had been raised here, married here, baptized here, said, yeah, this is the right thing to do, is to sell it. We tried to sell it to a church, but they're going to run into the same problems we are. And residential developers are buying up land over and above market value, and so the best stewardship on our end was to sell it to a residential developer. We couldn't leave here and leave more than $2 million on the table. But we're in the same place now that those churches who wanted to buy this, where they were.
It hurt in the heart, but we've changed the name of the church to Generations to honor the many generations that gave funds, built this property, and enabled us to move on and for generations spread God's word.
We stand on the generations before us. They found beauty in their community. And they built things that represented that era.